Ms. Inez Crutchfield, and the topic is a profile on the public career of Inez Crutchfield. And of course, Ms. Crutchfield, before we had to interrupt you for our first commercial break, you were talking about some of your background and experience information, and we certainly appreciate that. But let's give you an opportunity to finish that and at the same time move into the political career of Inez Crutchfield, because I think that in terms of your politics and your activities, I think that you have quite a reputation as a person being involved in politics. Let's do it from that perspective.
All right, well, just to kind of finish up that which we were discussing, at TSU, as I said, I'd never seen a swimming pool. Well, I'd seen a swimming pool, but I'd never been in one. I had never been on a tennis court. And there were so many things that were available to me there. When I received from Dr. Poe the scholarship to work, it was a work-study program where I would work, and but I would be in the Players Guild. And having had the background where my mother was an English teacher and the literature, and she directed the plays and everything. So I was involved with that at home and immediately kind of went toward that. Now, I became very involved as a student at TSU. Believe it or not, I played basketball and I played on the varsity team. I sang in the choral group or the choir and the concert group under Marie Brooks Strange. And I also, as I said, was with the Players Guild. And that in itself helped me a great deal to meet the public, because you had to do that if you were going. And the other thing that it did, Dr. Polk carried his students to various cities, and he saw to it for the plays, and we competed, and he saw to it that we were involved. And I went to Cincinnati, you know, to Florida, to various places where he had plays that he was competing with other of the black schools. So I was able, that was another plus as far as I was concerned. Meanwhile, my husband is still overseas, as we said then, overseas, and he was in the Army. When he was discharged and he came back, he came back to school also. And I must say this for him. My husband was a very smart man. He came back and he graduated from college 1/4 shy of 3 years. And that meant that every quarter he had to overload, but he did, and graduated with honors. And then we were both hired, because I received my master's at the same time he received his bachelor's degree. We were both hired at Tennessee State to work, and lived on campus, which was a wonderful experience again. And we eventually had children, and my first child was born while I was living on that campus. And all the students knew that Miss Crutchfield was expecting a baby, and all the students, and they were just very gracious about it. They teased me, some of the older ones that I see now, they tease me now about having been there and having done this. But that school has afforded me so much, and it prepared me to do some of the other things that I have done. I cannot tell you how grateful I am to Tennessee State University, or A&I as it was then, for the preparation that they gave me, the way I was prepared to go out and go into the world, because it was Tennessee State University that did that for me.
And now, looking at going into the world, what about your public career, and how did you become involved in politics, and especially at the level that you are now involved in politics? Let's talk about that.
I became involved in politics accidentally. I grew up in a home where my mother and father were Republican. My father, at his death, he was still Republican. My mother, of course, outlived my father, and when Kennedy became president, she decided that that was the way she had to go. She dearly loved Kennedy, and John F. Kennedy. And so she became involved. I mean, she, you know, appreciated that. I, by that time, had decided that I wanted to go with the Democratic Party. But quite by accident, I was called by Ms. Carrie Hull, and many of you will remember that she worked with the League of Women Voters as well as the YW, and she had been asked to join the Democratic Women's Club here in Davidson County. But because she was with the League of Women Voters, she was supposed to be nonpartisan. And so she told them that she could not, but she called me and asked if I would join. And I said, well, let me think about it, and what do I have to do? One of those kind of things. And then finally I called and I said, I will join. Can I bring someone with me? And you know, you kind of need somebody, if nobody's ever been there before, because they had no black members. So I said, can I bring someone with me? And he said, yes, you may. Who would you want to bring? And so I said, let me contact someone. And I called Mrs. Gentry, Carrie Gentry, and asked if she would go. Well, we talked about it, and she said, yes, she would go. So we, I laughingly say that we dressed up, of course. Women at that time did dress up. That's been about 45 or 46 years ago. We dressed up in our hats, gloves, suits, and we went to the Hermitage Hotel, which we had never been in before, and to attend the meeting. That's where they held their meetings, and attended the meeting. At that time, a woman named Rilla Moran Woods, she was Rilla Moran at that time, decided that we needed to have black members, and that was how I became involved, because there were some people who had decided maybe we need to set up a Negro branch, a Negro, you know, Democratic Women's Club, and she said, she felt like you didn't need to do that, but Maud Lynch, who was the wife of the president of the state Labor Party, and Joey Ellis, who was with Labor, and Molly Todd, they were the attendance was great, and no one knew we were joining except the president. And then they asked them to introduce their guests and new members. Well, when they stood up and introduced their guests and new members, they introduced me, Carrie, and there was one other woman that Labor had sent. And when they did that, there was a guest. But I have to try to do it this way. Immediately thereafter, Annabelle Clement O'Brien stood up.
And then hold on, let us have